introduce my team. My name is Michael Tran. I'm a freshman CSOM, and I'm an operations management major.
I'm Ashna Potluri. I'm in CSOM and MCAS, and I'm in finance and international studies.
Hey guys, my name is Xander. I'm a computer science major, and especially for this talk, it's important that I'm also the treasurer of the machine intelligence group.
And together we make Shawstainability. So, brief agenda of what we're going to go over today in this presentation. I'm going to first introduce the solution, then Xander will take it away by giving you context of the problem, the background of the problem. Michael will then discuss the stakeholders and those who are affected by both the problem and the solution. Then all three of us will take a deep dive into the plan outline and go into the details of our solution, Eagle Eye. And then finally, I'll conclude the presentation by discussing the potential risks of Eagle Eye, as well as the timeline of our proposal. So, to begin, our solution is to implement a student-to-kitchen feedback loop via computer vision. Our solution has two prongs to it. The first is the practical operation and implementation prong, which will then lead to the second prong, which is cultural shift, which both Xander and Michael will discuss.
Yeah, so when we were looking at this issue, we thought, well, maybe BC doesn't do a great job with food waste kitchen side, right? Maybe we're not, maybe we're over-purchasing, overspending, maybe there's spoiled food. Of course, as students, we see that sometimes meals aren't sold. But of course, as we look more into this project, we found that through a series of partnerships and then student organizations, and especially Lean Path, Boston College does an amazing job with kitchen side food waste. So what we did is we identified a gap, right? Where is some place that Lean Path isn't getting data? So, so looking at what Lean Path does, Lean Path is kitchen side, right? This is spoiled food, over-prepared food, over-purchased food, and it is fundamentally ingredient specific, right? The idea of Lean Path is that it stops waste before it happens, okay? Alternatively, right? Student side food waste, this is what we're targeting. So where Lean Path is a little over $1,000 a month to our knowledge, and of course it pays for itself many, many times over. Our solution is only $150 up front and a $10 a month sort of maintenance cost. The gap that we fill, right, is portion specific. So as the student were to hold their meal and throw it away, we wouldn't know just that rice is being wasted. We would know where the rice is coming from. So say, for example, the burrito bowl has way too much rice on it. On the kitchen side, we just know that all the rice is sold, right? You don't know that all the rice wasn't eaten, and once it's already in the compost, it's mixed together. It could be rice from chicken in two sides, it could be rice from tikka masala, it could be anything. So our solution targets portions, and it's meal specific, not ingredient specific.
So to get into the stakeholder analysis, we're broken up into 4 different groups. First is the diner students, and then there's like the kitchen side of BC Dining, and then there's also the greater community, the environment, and finally there's the administration of BC Dining, and they're further broken up. And these are goals for the respective stakeholders. So our main focus is the students, of course. It's all about them being able to communicate their preferences and taste to BC Dining. And then on the kitchen side, there's also the receiving end of the feedback, and we want to emphasize how like seamless the feedback is given, and how the kitchen can incorporate its changes accordingly, and this will lead to a better impact on the environment, and it will improve BC's dining's representation, as well as the university's mission to take care of the world, to take care of God's creation, as per St. Francis's statements in the Laudato Si. So our plan is, as you've seen before, this is a big two overarching steps. First step is establishing all the equipment, setting the system up, and then the second part is the culture shift that naturally arises from this new environment, new technology. So Xander will now go over the first overarching step.
Yep, so we're going to break practical operations into 3 sub-steps. So this will be like equipment installation, think the cameras over top of the receptacles, designing and training the model, and then last but not least, informing the users. So speaking first to installing the equipment, this is a quick mock-up of what this might look like. We would install cameras over top of compost and trash bin. Cameras will be very small, maybe small as a bottle cap, for example. They'll be pointing straight down. Those cameras will send image data to microcontrollers, which will be sent That data will be sent to Amazon Web Services stored in the cloud. From there, we'll eventually annotate the data. I'll talk about that later. But you can basically see we'll be able to eventually use that to display relevant facts in a very specific way to inform both the kitchen, right? The kitchen side will have their own understanding of the facts, and then students to affect culture, which I'll talk about in a minute. So speaking specifically to the equipment we're going to use, about $19 per package. Each package comes with 2 cameras and 2 integrated microcontrollers. It's important to note that those 2 things are integrated, so it'll be relatively seamless. Even though the machine intelligence group will do all of the setup for this, it shouldn't be too big a deal. Talking about model design, this is kind of a general overview for how computer vision models work. What's happening right now, essentially, is up here on the top left. This is problem framing. We've identified a gap. We're going to tackle it. Data collection, so there will be a time where the cameras are just placed. Students will be putting food, throwing it away, collecting data. Then the machine intelligence group will go through and annotate that data. Okay, that amount of rice, there's like some kind of an orange sauce there. Tikka masala, we can see is on the menu today. This is tikka masala, right? Annotate an absolute ton of data, and then eventually the human portion will be entirely removed, right? So we'll train the model on the X and Y, we'll train it on the input data and the annotated data. The model will be able to figure out where the waste is coming from, what meal, model deployment, and then we can dynamically retrain with new meals for new things, new applications, etc., new dining halls. And then last but not least, which kind of is going to tie quickly into the culture side here in a minute, is informing the users. Obviously, there are some sort of, there are privacy issues here, which we'll talk about later, and there are also some, people might not feel immediately comfortable, they might not know what's going on, why are the cameras above the waste receptacles. It's super important to inform the users throughout the entire process, right? So we're going to emphasize not only as the process is starting, what's going to happen, but as the process is in place, say for new users, during game days, etc., we have to have some way of informing them. So that'll be through posters just above the receptacles, as there are now, for like what is compostable, what is recyclable, but also for emails to students, etc.
Yes, thank you. So the culture shift that Xander was talking about involves 2 steps. The first is the feedback culture, where the students are familiar that their information and their tastes are recorded and dynamically acted upon. And then this leads into a new outlook on food waste, and it will hopefully encourage students to waste less food to begin with. So the first step of the, the few components of the feedback culture that are pretty valuable is the change aspect of it. Students are aware that when they do present their ingredients before they throw it away, that information is acted upon, like BC Dining takes care of it. They find out like if servings are like too much, or like which dishes are like most thrown away, which needs most work. Another component is the low barrier to entry. This is a very easy system to use. It's not like green to go, which is difficult to opt in. This is just like the cooperation of throwing the food away. Another appealing factor is the low confrontation. The students aren't actively asking dining staff to serve less food or serve less servings or adjust the sizes. And finally, there's the quick exchange of information between the diners and the kitchen, and this will allow for the demand for the dishes to be expressed and addressed very quickly. And part of it could be also surveys that are taken as to students explaining why they throw away the food. And then next, a study from a UK study on household food waste found that negative emotions connected to food waste resulted in more intentions to save food. And you would think that if there's more intentions, then consequently there's less food wasted. But in fact, the study found a correlation between food waste and a positive connection to more food that was actually wasted. So the idea is that when someone is throwing a food and regretfully makes the decision to save food while they're throwing it away, it doesn't improve the immediate situation. So BC needs to focus on a more positive presentation of the information. As you see, it could be on the cards that are on the tables, and it could be on the TV menu screens. Just positive statistics about mindful eating, and then information on which food is least wasted. Positive information like that will be more useful and more impactful on students initially throwing away less food than would like guilt-tripping statistics of, oh, this much food is wasted, and the negativity will slow things down. Next, Ashna will talk about the cost side of our program.
Thank you, Mike. So to really have a financial lens on our solution and our problem, we decided that we wanted to calculate the estimate cost that the average student would spend per meal. Now, we did this by getting a sample from the Get mobile app, and we used students from each meal plan, the light meal plan, the base meal plan, and the premium meal plan, to calculate our average cost. Then from there, we got a statistic from the director of dining services, Beth Emery, and she said that about 21,000 meals are served per day at BC. So that's how we got our approximate revenue of $189,000 per day that BC gets just from dining. We do recognize that this is probably on the lower end of the spectrum because our sample could be biased. However, these are the numbers that we are basing our assumptions off of. Now, we really wanted to show this because we just want to demonstrate how when a student pays $9 for their meal and they throw away their meal, not only is that student losing the $9 they spent on the meal, BC is also losing the money that they spent on the ingredients and preparation of that meal too. So both sides of this, of the kitchen and the student are losing in this situation. So Eagle Eye will mitigate that problem by identifying which meals are being thrown away more. So BC can then adapt to student preference. And so therefore, the student is more likely to come back and buy the meal again, or come back to BC Dining and buy other meals that they prefer. And on top of that, BC is less likely to lose more revenue, which is going to benefit them in the long run. Now, to go over in depth of the costs, we realize we don't have many costs when it comes to this to our solution. This is a very low cost solution, and the payback period is very short too. So our equipment, as Xander said earlier, is about $19 per package. It comes with 2 cameras. We're assuming that we need about 16 cameras in total when this operation continues. So that's going to be about $150. Again, we know that the number of cameras will probably vary depending on the reality of the situation, but even if we do need to add more packages, the cost is not going to vary that much. On top of that, the Amazon Web Services cost about $10 per month. That's where we store the information that we need to relay it to the staff, to the students, so on and so forth. Labor. This might be a surprising statistic, but our labor is going to cost nothing. And that is because we plan on partnering with Machine Intelligence Group, which Xander can talk more about.
So I'm representing the Machine Intelligence Group as the treasurer, right? This would be the first time that a computer vision system has been deployed for student site waste, or really waste in general. So everyone in the Machine Intelligence Group is incredibly excited to work on a project like this. It's novel. We want to introduce project site waste to our club anyway, so this really works for us.
Thank you, Xander. So to continue on, we are saying that electricity is negligible because we assume that these cameras will use very low amounts of electricity. So in total, for our cost for the first month is going to be the most that BC is going to spend, which is $160 about. And then from then on, it's going to be about $10 per month for the Amazon Web Services. So again, a really, really low cost, especially for an AI project. So we want to also address potential risks of this problem. The most prevalent one is privacy. Students may feel uncomfortable by the fact that there's a camera seeing them throw away their trash. However, again, this can be mitigated through constant communication and upkeep of student awareness about our solution. They should know that we're here to just track the food items and not actually eat them. Additionally, the slow start, it will take, as I'll show in the timeline next, it'll take about 2.5 semesters for our project to actually be deployed. However, once it's deployed, it's pretty self-sufficient, so it doesn't need a lot of maintenance. And then on top of that, non-compliance students may intentionally or unintentionally obstruct the camera, which won't take down the entirety of Eagle Eye, but it will obviously obstruct some of the data. However, through awareness and communication, students are less likely to do so. So as for the timeline, we plan on installing the cameras and designing the model at the start of the fall of 2024. The installation of cameras says it will take about half a semester, but with machine intelligence group. It will take about a day or two. It's a very short process. From there, the machine intelligence group will calculate and take up all the food data and the menu options, so they have that data. Then once the model is fully designed, it'll go into training. And through this operation, that's when the machine intelligence group will connect the data and the food images together, and then the AI process will pick up on that pattern. We plan on spreading posters around spring of 2025. We can obviously start earlier, and we plan on extending that as long as the AI operation commences and continues. And then deployment is hopefully by the start of mid-fall 2025. So thank you.
We'll go to questions.
So give me an idea of what the cameras will convert. So what would the data that comes to the kitchen look like, and what would it be?
So I can take this one. I like to use the example of enchiladas here because the enchilada meal comes with beans and rice, and I often find that no matter how much I eat, I can't finish the beans and rice. So lean path, you would know that all of the rice is being sold, right? If you looked in the compost, you might see that there's some rice in the compost, but you might not know where it comes from. So an example of some sort of data the kitchen might get is they might see, oh, okay, the enchilada meal is being wasted a lot, why is that? And then whenever you actually look at it, you see, oh, it's just the beans and the rice that are being thrown out. So maybe that means that you adjust what's served for that meal, because the cool thing about our system is it covers a gap that lean path doesn't see. So if you adjust the way you serve, right, that adjusts how much you have left over, which affects lean path, and so lean path picks up from there.
I have a question about kind of maybe a little leading to potential bias in the AI model that you're building here. Here, this accounts for food that's being wasted. It doesn't account for food that's primarily completely consumed.
Right. So
how do you adjust for not shrinking every portion to the point that it's so small that it disappears?
Yeah. So this is an instance segmentation issue for the computer vision. There will be multiple models that will be employed here. Basically, the layman's idea of this is if there is a large percentage of the plate that does not have waste on it, then we don't care about it.
Also to add on to that point, again, because it's AI, it will continually be updated because technology continuously will improve throughout time, and the machine intelligence group will check up on it because they're doing this for basically it's like a pro bono out of their own interest and passion.
Yeah, that sort of threshold of what percent of consumed food do we start begin to care, right? I mean, that's something that can just be hard adjusted.
Well, I'd also assume that you would have to take the data from the opposite side, right? So also from the kitchen side, you need data from them to understand how many units sold, so that you can then present how many units, the camera caught.
That's twofold. So we would want both the number of units sold, and we'd also just want to know the menu items for that day. We don't want to be looking for the Greek bowl if it's not on sale, obviously.
So my understanding from students is that one of the main factors for food waste on the student side is that there's variability in how much people eat. And in particular, there's a gender influence where men will be eating maybe larger portion sizes than women, and yet there's no real difference in how much you get, a standardized amount. And you want to serve to those who, I guess, you want to provide enough for everyone in that. So if you reduce your portion size, you may have this challenge of people who would like to eat more. So then maybe it increases their costs and they have to purchase more. So that's something maybe I'm curious if you thought about. So just how do you manage the variability in appetite, portion needs for a really diverse student body that may need to consume higher or lower based on their body size and what they do with their body every day?
I'm going to jump in here and ask about some activities. To go back to the enchilada example, some meals the rice and beans might be extra, for other meals they might be included. So this is, in my mind, at least the kitchen side solution. So maybe you reduce the price of the enchilada meal, but basically say that the rice and beans, it would cost the same if you were to purchase them now as the old enchilada meal. So then it's like an opt-in, opt-out. No one's losing in that scenario. That's how I would address that.
Yeah, I think this will go into the more like day-to-day interactions where the servers, they calculate the proportions. Well, they just judge by the proportions as well. And students can ask for a little extra or more on their servings. But overall, this program will also see how individual, how like a certain meal, like overall is taken. So it's not only serving size, it's also like qualitatively, like which dishes are more wasted over others. So then there's also like a recipe and a taste factor to it. Just because one of the studies also that was shown, it said that on college campuses the main two reasons for food waste is like serving sizes, but also like students just deciding it doesn't like taste well. So that may play as a bigger cost cutting factor, like fixing the taste.
It's more than just the portions, for sure.
And also, if you didn't know, this slide basically shows on the left some excuses that students have to wasting food, and then this is our solution to how Eagle Eye is going to mitigate these excuses or problems.
Really, we're covering a data point that the path simply doesn't have.
So,
I just have my second question. I just wanted to hear more about the labor part, and in particular, having, like, how many students are in that club? What do you deal with turnover between semesters and years and training? Like, how reliable is this source of labor, and is that really realistic?
Okay, so I mean, I'll talk to this, Trevor and Meg, right? We have about 15 or 20 active members for pretty much every single club meeting. Of those, we would do this in sort of a project opt-in, opt-out. There would maybe need to be me and one other member of the e-board that is consistently working on this project. But we really want to use this as a teaching opportunity. So there will be turnover, but because we're presenting this as a teaching opportunity, we want to give students the chance to work on this kind of project. I mean, that turnover is kind of by design, right? We will make sure the project will get finished, like we're in charge of it, but we can sort of delegate bits and pieces out to individuals in May that might want it just for experience purposes.
And to add on to that, in terms of labor, so once the program is self-running and the data model is trained, it'll take minimal effort, as in just like two people, like once like in a while, just like performing checkups. But for the labor after that is would mainly be like presenting the data on the menu screens. That could be like the job of sustainability interns at the dining hall, like just to present the data like in the positive way as we hope to. So that is where like we depend on the labor the most.
It's much easier to always get buy-in for things after you have a proof of concept, so I do like the idea. But a quick question, let's talk about risks, about privacy risks
Sure.
a tiny bit with $20 cameras.
Yeah.
Can you just let me know what you're thinking?
Yeah, so for clarity, this is an entirely closed loop, like entirely closed loop. These cameras connect to microcontrollers connect to Amazon Web Services. That is like all they connect to. I would argue that you'd almost be more concerned if there was a camera, there's a camera in front of the wall and a computer behind the wall that was taking in all the data, and then for whatever reason someone can access that computer and then do whatever they want with those sort of images. I don't know how malicious you could be with photos of people's hands. I'm sure you probably could be. But the fact that this is essentially the microcontroller itself, it's just like a box that sends data. You can't do much from it, right? It's really just kind of a conduit between our cameras and Amazon Web Services. And once it's in the cloud, like Amazon is protecting that. Of course, honestly, we could use the non-compliance idea. If students, or if it's really a concern for them that their hands aren't photographed, I mean, they really can just cover the camera and dump, and we can just hard code that if the screen's like 90% black, that don't care. Yeah.
So the camera's actually lower, it's not like a bug,
I mean,
where
it
you're
will
also
be
doing
like-
facial recognition.
No, it will literally only see the square of like the receptacle and then throwing it away. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe just kind of two comments on budget and implementation. One is you've included basically no marketing costs in education, right? I mean, just the time to send emails, to print up new placards and so on and so forth is, I mean, based on your total budget right now, non-trivial. Like I think that would exceed your $150 just to get that up and going. Also just camera housing, like to just say, we'll walk into the dining halls and like just kind of stanchions to put cameras on to make sure that they're focusing the right way. And you're not gonna, and they're not gonna get knocked over every time somebody comes running through the cafeteria on a football game weekend. These, I think that you may find that hardware, again, turns into a non-trivial cost.
So the machine intelligence group is actually partnered directly with the Makerspace.
Yeah.
And we have members that are e-board co-chairs for both groups. So the Makerspace would be able to entirely handle the actual rigging of the cameras.
Okay.
Especially thinking about something like lower, where you can't have the cameras directly on top, right? There's the rotating dolly.
Yeah.
So It goes beyond that, and the costs, I mean, the makerspace is paid for, I guess, by DC, so, but those costs are already being spent, the club already has funding. So as far as additional funding for this exact project, there would be no cost for the rigging, and I think it was kind of implied, but we didn't really express this, that we are more than happy to do all of the promotional materials. Of course, there will be cost of emailing, et cetera, but it should be
And then you
relatively
just
trivial.
need an outlet, that's all you need?
Yes, that's
So,
correct.
I mean, which again, may not be at those locations,
true,
so that's
yes.
an infrastructure,
Yes,
and it's actually more expensive than you might think.
that is very possible, yes.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, very much.